Welcome back here to a full day of football as Notre Dame fans are celebrating a dominant win over their rivals Michigan in the last foreseeable meeting between the two teams for the future. A 31-0 beatdown, and for much more on that game from the stadium, we're going to bring in sports director Pete Byrne, who's been celebrating with some of those rowdy fans outside the stadium. Pete, it started off with Golson. It ends with a dominant performance by the Irish defense. What did you see from Brian Van Gorder and his group?
Well, I saw a lot of aggressiveness, Carl, from the Notre Dame defense. Again, we thought we'd see some new wrinkles this week because they didn't show a whole lot against Rice, but never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined you'd actually see a shutout against a Michigan team. I think you mentioned the statistic. They hadn't been shut out in a game since 1984, which was the longest active streak in college football. Very aggressive, and the other thing I saw from both the defense and the offense is a very clean game. They only committed 3 penalties tonight. They only committed 2 penalties a week ago. So through 2 games, this team has only committed 5 penalties. If they continue a trend like that throughout the year, they're going to be very difficult to beat because teams that don't beat themselves often don't lose many games. They also have not committed a turnover yet this year. You talked about things starting with Everett Golson. I can't tell you how much different of a quarterback he looks like than the last time we saw him at the end of 2012. And he was looking good at the end of 2012, but he's thrown for over 500 yards so far this season in 2 games. 8 total touchdowns. That's 5 through the air, 3 with his feet, and he has not committed a single turnover. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but if you extrapolate that 2 games at a time, those are Heisman Trophy type numbers right now, Carl. Again, we're 2 games into this. We've got a long way to go, but if you look at Notre Dame's schedule, the next 2 games are very winnable games. Purdue struggled today on their home field with Central Michigan. Syracuse barely beat a 1AA team a week ago. Very, very good chance that Notre Dame is 4-0 when a ranked Stanford team comes to town in October. And you talk about excitement. It was exciting here in the stadium tonight, but that game will be crazy.
There's been so many players that have stepped up during this streak over the first 2 games, such dominant performances, including a lot of the young players on both defense and offense. Some of the sophomores that we heard about last year finally performing this year. Who in particular has caught your eye over the first 2 games?
Well, defensively, we saw Jalen Smith do what we know he can tonight. He had a quiet opener against Rice with just 3 tackles, but midway through the 3rd quarter, he already had 8 tackles, including a couple for a loss, chased down a running back. We knew he was going to be good, but what about Will Fuller? 9 catches tonight for 89 yards and a touchdown. Several of those catches were in traffic when he was covered, when he went up and got the ball. His touchdown catch was fantastic that you just showed, where he went over a defender to make the catch. He moved the chains. When DeVaris Daniels went out with a suspension, which is still the future that we still don't know, we wondered who's going to be a go-to guy in the Irish offense as a wide receiver. He has stepped up as just a sophomore. Corey Robinson's just a sophomore. We haven't seen a lot from him through 2 games, but a really nice catch tonight. And, of course, he's playing with the screw on his hand that was operated on a little more than a week ago. So you got to figure that as he heals up, we're going to see more from him, too. So that sophomore class is really starting to shine early in this season.
And final question for you, Pete, as we go back to the defense, which, again, pitched the very first time that Michigan has ever been shut out in this series tonight. They rode that defense to the national championship in 2012. This is a new coordinator under Brian Van Gorder. How different, how much more dynamic do they look in this scheme than under Bob Diaco?
Yeah, 2 totally different defenses. 2 years ago in 2012, they were a bend but don't break. They gave up yardages, they tightened things up in the red zone, they held teams to field goals, and they had a few timely turnovers. Well, right now, this team hasn't given up much of anything this year. They got beat twice last week on long plays, on miscommunications by the secondary, and you can't have that. But other than that, they gave up nothing, and tonight they gave up nothing. Michigan got some yards, but they forced a lot of turnovers. They had very few big plays, and on the critical downs, on 3rd downs, Michigan converted less than 50% of the time. Again, if you play defense like that, you're going to be a hard team to beat, and throw in the fact that so far the offense looks like they have an ability to score a lot more points than they ever have under Brian Kelly here at Notre Dame. That's a good formula. Again, I want to stress 2 games in, and the schedule is daunting as we get into October, but so far so good.
That is certainly the case. Celebrating a 31-0 victory there at Notre Dame Stadium. Pete, thank you so much for joining us tonight and fighting those rowdy crowds out there. We're going to keep